Well, how's it going, you guys? Welcome back to the Kneady Homesteader channel and the Canning Revolution workshop. This month in January 2021, our goal at the end of the month is to get everybody canning. If there's going to be a revolution, let it be a canning revolution, right? So many of you have been wanting to learn this life skill. So many of you have your canners and you're just ready to go. You just need to work through maybe some fears, maybe some anxiety. Maybe you just don't know, you just need a visual. So my goal here is to answer the questions that you have, to show the visual, the behind the scenes, what many YouTubers, including myself, really don't show in videos, in hopes that it eases your mind, it eases some of that stress, and you guys will build your confidence in being able to can. So that's the goal, to get everybody canning. So today, I'm actually going to film a few videos. Hopefully I can kick out a few of them for you. I'm really going to try to do these videos in short spurts so they're not overwhelming, they're not overcomplicated. I do have, and I'm going to leave up above, I have a canning playlist with 144 canning videos in it. I also have another playlist, Canning for Beginners, where I talk about things like jars and my advice to newbie canners and all of that. I have several videos in that playlist. I think I have 17, So I'll leave that playlist up above too. So go and check those videos out. And so everything that I haven't answered in those videos, I'm going to try to answer in this workshop for you. And today we are going to focus on, so you've decided what you want to can in the book. We're going to look at the recipe and then we are going to prep everything. So I'm going to show you the steps that I do behind the scenes, usually off camera, in order to get my canning workspace up and going and organized. What we're going to look for in our jars. I'm going to talk a little bit about lids, and we're working ourselves up to our first mock canning session, which will be a mock water bath canning session that we're just going to walk through the steps. We're not going to worry about canning anything. We're just going to walk through the steps so that you get a visual of what you'll be doing. You can do a test run so that there's no pressure of, dealing with a recipe and pectin and all of those things. We're going to do a mock run through, and then almost like those practice deliveries, when you go into labor and delivery and you go to all the classes, and then they do kind of like a walkthrough of the labor and delivery room, so that when you go into labor, nothing is like new and strange to you. You've kind of walked through the floor. That's kind of like what we're doing for canning. So with that, I'm going to take you over there, and I'm going to show you the tools that I pulled out. I'm going to show you how I wash everything up and how I organize my workstation. So let's go. All right, so here are the tools that I'm going to bring out for my canning session. First and foremost, let's take a look at our book. So we are going to take a recipe out of the USDA Guide to Home Canning, okay? And so now in this book, you need to be a little bit vigilant when reading the recipes, because many times, like this one, making jam without added pectin, it will tell you what you need as far as like berries go, the amounts, but the rest of the recipe is over here. Then we go into making jams and jellies with added pectin. And so sometimes you'll look at that and you'll want to go with that chart. Make sure you don't do that. Make sure you follow. I wish that this book was written a little bit easier for beginners, but it is what it is, so we are going to roll with it. So if we were going to do jelly and jam with added pectin, our processing time would be right here. Now I want to talk a minute about processing time, and I'm going to leave you a link to the USDA website where it talks about this, because as of late, and you'll see now I'm in this range here, 0 to 1,000 feet, it shows my processing time is going to be 5 minutes. If I'm going to process for 5 minutes, I need to sterilize my jars. Okay, I'm going to have to sterilize these in boiling water for 10 minutes before I can. However, if I want to avoid that step, I can go ahead and bump that processing time up to 10 minutes, and that will sterilize my jars while it's in the canner processing. Okay, so I don't want to overwhelm you too much with that info. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the link where you can read how to do that properly down below. And then you are going to want to adjust it if you are at these elevations. You're going to want to read that article as well, because you are going to have to bump up your processing time a little bit too. So that is an option. We are going to do it by the book though, because we are new, right? So we're going to just stick with the book. We're going to do it by the book, and I'm going to show you how I sterilize my canning jars, which is very easy because I basically do it while I'm making the jam, so it's really not a big deal, okay? But if you do want to process it for 10 minutes and avoid the sterilization process, that is an option for you. I just wanted to lay that out. So now that we have our recipe, we're just going to do a mock recipe. We're just going to go with a jam jelly with added pectin. We're going to look to see what we need. So we either need half pints or pints. And of course, we are going to hot pack this. You cannot raw pack jams or jellies. And in this, and with this, you are going to want to refer to how much fruit you're going to be using, and that will yield you how many half pints you're going to use, okay? Now, good rule of thumb to can is always add an extra jar. So if you're doing something like apricot jam, okay, you need 5 to 6 half pints. I will be using then, I would bump that up to 7 half pints. I would prepare 7 half pints with 7 lids, 7 rings, just in case, because sometimes, you know, maybe there's a chip in a jar that you didn't notice. Maybe a jar got dirty. Anything can happen. So it's always best, especially if you're sterilizing jars, to do 1 extra. You know, you might find something's wrong with the lid or a ring or something like that. So I always put an extra backup just in case. And you don't use it, you don't use it. That's how I do it. But if you are diligent and really inspect your things before you process with them, you shouldn't have any problem. I still go ahead and process 1 extra jar just in case, because it's better to be safe than sorry. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move our book out of the way. All right. And what I have out, I'm just going to go ahead and use 2 jars. Again, if you're doing a recipe though, you're going to want to do, you know, 6 to 7 jars, depending on what recipe you're using. We're just going to do our mock canning session with half pints. These are little half pint jelly jars. They do take the regular sized mouth lids. So I did get out 2 lids. Now this is a ball lid, and somebody asked me about the lids that they're selling on Amazon, and I do have one of those lids as an example to show you guys. All right, so this is a ball. This is one that they're selling on Amazon. I'm going to flip it over and you can see a difference. I will tell you, I have not canned with these, and I don't plan on canning with these. Now, that's not to say I wouldn't use them, say, on dehydrated jars that would hold my dehydrated food, or, you know, something like that as a backup. So I'm not going to throw these away because, you know, waste not, want not. I can't bring myself to like ditch them. So I have them in a bag. I have them as a reserve. If in an emergency situation I had to can with them, then I would have them. But for the most part, I am not canning with the lids from Amazon, okay? I am sticking with the ball, or I also buy Bernardin lids in bulk from an Amish bulk food store. Some asked me about the Better Homes and Gardens or the Mainstays at Walmart. Those might be the only ones that you can find right now. My opinion in using the Mainstays or the Better Homes and Gardens, they work pretty well for water bath canning, okay? Their fail rate on water bath canning is pretty small. You might get one here and there. they don't hold up as well in pressure canning. So that's at least my take on it. So whether or not you want to use those, if those are the only ones you can find, and we're talking about putting up food, you know, it might be worth the risk to you to try them. I stick with those, if I have those on hand, I stick with those for the water bath canning processes. And I just stick with the Ball or the Bernardin for my, Tattlers for my pressure canning. So I hope that's helpful to some of you, because I know I got a couple of questions about lids. So I wanted to address those. So we've got 2 lids, we've got 2 rings. Of course, this is going to change depending on what you're canning, okay? And we've got 2 jars, and this is what we're going to use for our mock water bath canning session. What I also have are 2 lid lifters or Pokey Joes. One I will use as a lid lifter, and one I will use as a debubbler. So I always use 2 at one time. We also have our jar lifters, so we have that. We also have a funnel, so I'm just going to use my regular mouth stainless steel funnel. And then you want some kind of towel. Try to get one with a low nape on it. You don't want one of those really fluffy towels or like a bath towel or anything that's fluffy, because it won't hold your jars even, straight, level. So something more flat, like a tea towel, will work best. You could also use a dish. You know, they sell those dish mats for drying mats, those dish drying mats. Those work really well. So you just want something that's going to really hold your jars and hold them well without having them, you know, be a little wobbly. So now that we have all of this, I'm going to take you over to my sink, and I'm going to show you what I do before each and every canning session. Okay, so it's super important, first and foremost, have a clean sink. Okay, everything that I do, especially when it comes to canning, I really try to make as clean as possible. And then what we want to do, we want to use really hot water. Okay, we're going to plug down the drain here. And then what I like to use is Blue Dawn Original Soap. I just think it works best. We want really hot water. And you don't have to fill your sink completely, but you do want a bit of water so we can wash everything properly. Now to the sink, I'm going to be adding some vinegar to this, okay? Probably about 1/4 cup if I had to guess. And this is really going to help clean everything. Now you're going to notice too that sometimes when you can, or if you buy older jars, you might have a jar that's cloudy or scaly. If that happens, you're going to want to soak a jar with some cleaning strength vinegar, some Blue Dawn, and hot soapy water, and let it sit for about 10 minutes. And that jar should wash up for you. It's just from hard water and, you know, being used, kind of older, and that's totally normal and typical. Okay, so now that we have our hot soapy water, we're going to go ahead and drop in, let me go get another lid. We're going to drop in our lids. It is important that you wash your lids. Remember, when you get this out of a box, boxes are known to have cockroaches on them. They're known to have rat feces on them. You're dealing with a paper box, and it is... I have seen people on YouTube make YouTube videos where they just pop open a canning box full of lids, and they just put the lids right on their jars. We're not going to do that, okay? We're going to keep everything as clean as possible, and that starts by washing our lids, okay? So we're going to drop those in the hot soapy water. We're also going to drop our rings. This is when I look over my rings. Okay, I am looking for rust. I do not can with rusty rings or bands. A little bit of surface rust, you know, a little bit of spots maybe here and there. Discolorization, which will happen in your pressure canner when you use vinegar, that's a different story. But when you get a lot of rust, I don't like to put that on my canning jars because as you're canning and as you are venting, those lids are venting, you're going to have food that touches the inside of this ring, which means that food is going to be touching rust. And I just don't mess with my food like that. Now, that's going to be up to you on what you're going to do, on whether or not that's important to you. But for me, that is important. So I don't use rusty rings or bands. So it's at this time that I look over my bands. I make sure that nothing is dented because that can affect your sealing. I make sure nothing is rusted. And when they look good to me, I toss them in the water. Okay, and here's one of the Bernardin bulk ones. So I'm going to toss that in the water. Then I have my jars. So this is when I'm going to take a look at my jar. I'm going to make sure that I don't see any kind of cracks anywhere around. Okay, I'm going to look all the way around. I'm going to check the bottom because many times if a jar cracks, sometimes the bottom comes out because there's just a fine crack around the edge. And then I'm going to take a look at the top, and with my finger, because sometimes you don't see it, but you can feel it. And I'm just going to take my finger all the way around that rim, and I'm feeling for anything sharp, anything chipped. And when everything looks good and feels good to me, it goes in the water. Okay, so let's check this one. And then let's look it over. And that one also looks good to me. So in the water it goes. Okay, my jar lifters. I don't wash these until after the canning process, and then I just usually toss them right into the dishwasher. These don't really touch any of the food products, so I don't feel the need to wash those beforehand. But these are going to touch my food. When I use a debubbler, this is going to touch my food product. So in it goes. And of course, our funnel is going to touch our food. So in that goes. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to wash it up. So I take it. Now these are already cleaned because these were ran through the dishwasher, but they were sitting in my pantry. So I washed them anyway. We are also going to sterilize them, but we do want them nice and clean. Make sure that there's no dust in them at all. Okay. Okay, and then we're just going to make sure these are clean. These I also run in the dishwasher after a canning session, but I just like to make sure that they're nice and clean because they're going to touch our food. Our bands are nice and clean. Our funnel is nice and clean. And to me, this is not overkill because I am putting food by for my family, and it is my responsibility to make sure that it is done properly and that it does not make anyone sick. And so I take the extra precautions. My family's worth it to me. And some of these jars might sit on my shelf for a year, 2 years, sometimes 3. I want them canned properly. So I take the extra steps. All right, I'm going to spin you around and we're going to set up a station. Okay, and I almost forgot. Right before we set up the station, I'm going to go ahead and give my canner just a quick bath in hot soapy water just to make sure that it's nice and clean, and again, no dust. It's been sitting on a shelf, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and take a rag, get some soap and vinegar on there, and give it a quick bath. Okay, once my canner is nice and washed, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start filling it with hot water. Just plain hot water. I don't ever use this water bath canner anymore because I use my electric water bath canner. So it'll be kind of fun using this again. I haven't used this in a couple of years. So I'm going to put my rack right down below. and I'm gonna let that fill up. Okay, so here is our pot of water, okay? And if you have this canner, I like to fill it to just about the first rim. Now remember, when you are water bath canning, it's very important that the water covers the tops of the jars up over the jars at least an inch, okay? So that's our goal. So now I have it on my stovetop, and I'm gonna make sure it's centered. And this is when I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna turn it on. And I turn mine on about a medium-high heat. This is my power burner, so I don't like to turn it on too high, but everybody's stove is different, so you do what's best for you on your stove. And then we're gonna come over here. We're gonna grab our jars here, okay? They're nice and clean. And safety first. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get our jar lifters, okay? And I'm boiling some water. Well, actually I'm just under a boil. What we're gonna do when you put a jar in the canner, okay, you wanna do it off to the side so that you don't get splashed. Soak it under the water just a little bit, let it submerge nice and gentle, and then sit the jar down, okay? So let's try that again with the second one, okay? I'm gonna put it in on the side. This is just to sterilize them, to fill them with jars. If you plop them in, you might get splashed with really hot water, and that's not pleasant. So, water bath canning is not my favorite because you do tend to get burned if you are not careful. So what we're gonna do now with this, what we want to do is bring this pot up to a boil, and then we're gonna put the cover on it. We're gonna boil this for 10 minutes. That's what's going to sterilize those jars. Again, I'll leave the article down below on how you can process your jars for 10 minutes instead of 5, and you can bypass this. But if you're going to be a canner, a well-rounded canner, right, you need to know the process. So it's important for me to show you this old school way of doing it, okay? So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put this lid on here because it's just gonna help it come to a boil a lot quicker. Okay, so now let's talk about my workstation. I pretty much set up my workstation the same way every time I can, okay? And I know many of you have noticed that this is how I do it, and it just works for me, okay? So first and foremost, always a nice clean towel, okay? That will be stained with berries from canning, but I love these towels. I got these from Grove. They work really well for canning. So there's my towel. Then to that, what I'm going to add is a pot. It doesn't matter if it's a pot or a bowl. This pot is a small one. It's from Emerald Lagasse. It's really old. It works really well for my canning lids and rings. So I set a pot there, okay? Usually over here, I will set my canning pot if I've got something that I'm canning here, like jelly and jam. I also might just keep it on the burner. It all depends. I like to set out my tongs, put our lids and our rings right into the pot. Our canning funnel, which is nice and clean. I use an extra jelly jar for that. So I put an extra jelly jar here. I put my funnel here, and then whatever Pokey Joe I'm gonna use, my debubbler, I lay it in there. And then that way, when I'm canning jams or jellies, pickles, whatever it is I'm canning, apple pie filling, it doesn't get messy. I have a home for it that it can go in. You know, the funnel can drip into this jar, the Pokey Joe drip in the jar, but it's not laying all over my towel, getting my towel dirty and sticky. I really try my best to keep my work area as clean as possible. You know, and that's how I do it. You're gonna find your own rhythm. This is mine. I also get out a little cup of some sort, a little saucer, something like this. This is like one of those, I think it is an Asian dipping bowl. So I like to set this usually right off into the corner, okay? And then this is what I use for my vinegar, because this is what we're gonna use to clean off our rims, okay? So that's how I do it, all right? So just so that you can see, This is my usual standard setup when I can. All right. And then what I'm going to do as the jars sterilize, I'm going to come over here. Now, when I get close to canning, this usually when I do this, I'm making jam on the other burner. Okay. This is the time where I would start making my jam or my jelly, because by the time my jam and my jelly is done, these are already sterilized. That's if you are going to skip the step that I'm going to leave you down below. Okay. That's totally up to you. But this is how I start timing everything. Okay. So right before I start, these are sterilized. My jam is done and it's ready to go. I usually make jam right there. Okay. Then, and I use a tea kettle. Okay. You could put this pot, take the lids and the rings off, put water in it. You could have it simmering on your back burner. Okay. You don't want boiling water, but I use really hot water because it really does help soften that compound, and it really does help make your jars seal better, in my opinion. This is a very old school way, but this is how the canning queens before me have taught me how to do it. This is how older books have taught me, and this is what works for me, so I'm not changing it as long as it's not dangerous. Okay, so now this compound is a bit thinner, so you don't want to boil these lids. Okay, there's no reason to boil this unless you're using Tatler lids, which are the reusable lids. In that case, you do want to use boiling water. But for this, I just want hot water. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add that hot water now to my lids and my rings, and I'm going to let them sit there for just a couple minutes. And at this time, once this is already boiled and everything is sterile, our jam and jelly is ready to go, it is time to can. And it's at this point where I'm going to end this video. I'm going to film the next one for you, and we are going to do a mock canning session for water bath canning. Okay, and I'm just giving you the backdoor visual for you guys so that you can test run your canner. You can test run the layout before you invest any money in the food to actually can, okay? It just takes some of the pressure off of you when you're a new canner. So I'm hoping that this is helpful to you. If it at least helps even one of you out there, it's worth me filming these for you, because at the end of the day, I really want you to feel empowered and feel confident enough to actually start canning and hopefully growing your own food this summer, and being able to put food by in your pantry for you and your family. So that's the goal, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below if you have any questions, and I'll probably be seeing you tomorrow where we are going to actually do a mock canning session of water bath canning. All right, guys, you take care. See you tomorrow.